Angela Dingler, Management 440, Professor, Porter, June 5th, 2021. Project Management Training by Angela Dingler. Overview, Project Closeout, International and Cross-Cultural Considerations, Agile Project Management, and PMI certification programs. Good morning. My name is Angela Dingler, and I will be presenting training to you today in project management, which will include the topics of project closeout, international factors and cross-cultural considerations, agile project management, and PMI certification programs. The following slides will contain information about each of these topics, and we will go over the information contained on the slides. The project closeout is a very important step in the life cycle of a project, and it is necessary to follow certain steps in order to be complete and thorough. According to Stephanie Ray, a project manager, there are 10 steps one can follow in order to be sure and close out a project thoroughly and completely. The first step is to start at the beginning with the project scope document that you created and make sure that you've met all the requirements listed there. You want to compare what you began with and what you have ended up with to make sure everything has been done. The next step is to make sure that all deliverables have been handed off and signed by stakeholders, getting their approval and satisfaction. It is necessary to make sure that all the deliverables are accepted and approved by the stakeholders and have been received by them. The third step is that other project documents must also be signed by the appropriate person. This includes any outstanding contracts and agreements with vendors and other contractors. It is imperative that all documents are signed by the right people. All contracts and agreements with any vendors or contractors must be signed and accounted for at the close of the project. The fourth step in project closeout is that once all documents are signed off on, then process them and pay off all invoices and close out any project-related contracts. Once the documents have been signed off on, one must make sure that they are processed and paid and that all parties are satisfied. This will ensure for completion in the process of closing out the project. The fifth step is to add all documents together, including finalizing all project reports, then organize and archive them as historical data to be used for future reference. The closing out of the project can be used for making sure future projects run smoothly and completely. The sixth step in project closeout is to use collected paperwork to identify and document the lessons learned over the course of the project, including any feedback from stakeholders so you don't make the same mistakes in future projects. Again, closing out one project can be beneficial to future projects because one can take the time to record mistakes and/or suggestions based on how the project went and moved along and completed. The next step is to assign a transition support person to shepherd the project after completion so that the project closure is thorough. Assigning a person to be over the project through completion helps to make sure that everything continues to move smoothly and is complete. Next, release or reassign the project resources, which includes your team closing out the project, and other project personnel and any equipment or site rentals used for the project. When closing out the project, you must take the project resources which were used during the project and release them or reassign them. You also must make sure that any site rentals are closed out. The next step is to get a project management software if you have not gotten one, as it helps control not only the life cycle of the project, but also the process of closing the project thoroughly. The last step in the process, and one of the most important, is to celebrate with your project team. They did the work and deserve credit and an opportunity to blow off steam until the next project is started. Celebrating your team's success and the completion of the project is a great way to give incentive to the team members too for the next time they work with you on a project. Even if a project has run relatively smoothly during the course of the project, there can be some issues at project closeout that can be challenges and opportunities for improvement. According to Brad Eagland of PM Tips, These are just a couple of issues that can crop up and will need to be dealt with when you are closing the project. Sometimes there may be some issues with thorough identification and agreement on all remaining deliverables. One will need to make sure that all remaining deliverables are agreed upon and taken care of by the end of the project. Also, there can be loss of control of the charges to the project as things are winding down because people on the team may start doing whatever it takes to get through the final push, and this often damages the project budget. One would be wise to keep a close eye on team members to be sure they are not doing this and damaging the budget. One would do well to keep close track of what is taking place at project closeout with the budget. Another issue that may happen is that project team members become heavily involved in startup activities on new projects as the project is winding down and they are put on other teams with new projects. One solution to this is to stay in touch with these team members and help them stay on track with finishing your project. Something else that may take place is that there is a loss of interest in tasks such as documentation and administrative work at the end of the project. One way to combat this is to have someone in charge of this aspect of the project who enjoys this type of work and who can be trusted to take care of it. One more thing to mention as a challenge to project closeout is that there can be problems with agreement on what outstanding commitments still exist. This can be solved by having clear commitments in writing prior to the project closeout and to be sure that there is clear communication and understanding regarding what commitments there will be at the end of the project. Project closeout scenario. Determine an appropriate response to handling the following scenario. You have been handling the remodeling of a hotel and casino in Egypt and have been there for going on 2 years. You are now ready to close out the project, but there are some questions about the deliverables because you replaced tile and ceilings in all the bathrooms, but the casino is asking for you to also have replaced tile and ceilings in the kitchen as well. They feel as if the kitchen would have been included in the deliverable of replacing tile and ceilings in rooms with tile floors. This was not clearly stated in the contract. What do you do? These are a couple of international factors and cross-cultural considerations mentioned by Katie Reynolds at Holt EDU. Foreign laws and regulations must be considered and paid attention to when doing business in other countries. One must get familiar with the foreign laws and regulations to be sure and adhere to them in order to make sure the project runs smoothly and has no issues in this area. From tax implications through to trading laws, navigating legal requirements is a central function for any successful international business. Eligibility to trade is a significant consideration, as are potential tariffs and the legal costs associated with entering new markets. Another thing to consider with foreign laws and regulations are labor laws and the way that hiring and firing are done. Cost calculation and global pricing strategy is another area of international factors to be aware of when managing a project overseas and in another country. Setting prices in another country can be difficult but achievable to where you make a profit. You can research local and direct market prices in the area, but you still must take into account costs like shipping, manufacturing, and labor. For instance, the cost of production and shipping, labor, marketing, and distribution, as well as your margin, must be taken into account for your business to be viable. Currency rates are also of great consideration when dealing in a foreign market as things can fluctuate and change. Monitoring exchange rates must therefore be a central part of the strategy for all international businesses. However, global economic volatility can make forecasting profit especially difficult, particularly when rates fluctuate at unpredictable levels. One can possibly avoid this by adding a set price into the contracts. Other major considerations when doing international business are communication difficulties and cultural differences. One must be sure to know the language of the country where one is doing business or have very reliable translators and their services. Also, one must be sure to research the culture where he or she will be conducting business to be sure that one knows acceptable behaviors and what is not acceptable. Effective communication with colleagues, clients, and customers abroad is essential for success in international business, and it's often more than just a language barrier you need to think about. Nonverbal communication can make or break business deals too. Cultural differences scenario. Determine an appropriate response to handling the following scenario. You have been assigned to lead and manage a project in Germany. You have a month to prepare for the first meeting with German stakeholders. What will you do to make sure the meeting goes well and you make a good impression? You will be using interpreters for the meeting as well to help you with the language barrier. Agile project management is an iterative approach to project management that focuses on breaking down large projects into more manageable tasks which are completed in short iterations throughout the project lifecycle. Teams that adopt the Agile methodology are able to complete work faster, adapt to changing project requirements, and optimize their workflow. There are 4 core values to Agile project management. The first of them is that individuals and interactions are over processes and tools. The human aspect of projects will always be important, and that is why, with Agile project management, the first core value includes individuals and interactions over processes and tools. The second core value is working software over comprehensive documentation. Working software will ensure that the documentation is completed if the project manager uses it correctly. The third core value is customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Internal and external customers are great and valuable assets, and treating them accordingly is best. You want the customer to be involved throughout the project so that they feel like their needs are being met. The fourth core value to Agile project management is responding to change over following a plan. This value is one of the biggest departures from traditional project management. Historically, change was seen as an expense and one to be avoided. Agile allows for continuous change throughout the life cycle of any given project. Each sprint provides an opportunity for review and course correction. There are a few challenges and opportunities for improvement that go along with Agile project management, and these are discussed by Stephanie Overby of the Enterprisers Project. She says that clashes with finance can occur because the budgeting is different with Agile project management. When you first move to Agile, funding can be a challenge, says Colin Chapman, Chief Delivery Officer at Agile software services provider Nexiant. With traditional projects, IT makes a business case that defines a project scope and cost down to the dime. Agile works differently. It requires room to release and iterate, Chapman explains. You don't scope everything out to the nth degree. For a lot of finance organizations, that's a big leap. Another challenge Overby discusses is change resistance to Agile. Agile is a different way of working than is traditionally done with project management, and this can cause resistance. Leaders in Agile project management need to lead by example and have open communication with employees and team members. Another challenge is Agile burnout. This can occur when team members overcommit early on and there is a lack of pacing for the team. Developers overestimate their abilities as the start of the project and then work overtime trying to keep cycles on track. The solution for Agile burnout is to help keep team members on pace and encourage them not to try and work themselves to death, keeping up with the pace that starts from the beginning. One last challenge to be discussed here is Agile fever. Agile fever is when an organization tends to try and make Agile project management work for every project and situation. Agile works best for complex or unknown solutions in cases where the work is modular. Excuse me, and can be conducted in rapid iterations. This can be avoided by remembering that Agile is for certain types of projects and not for every single one. Agile project management scenario. Determine an appropriate response to handling the following scenario. You have been assigned to lead and manage a project in which you are told that Agile project management will be used. You must convince the finance department to adopt the budget which is configured by the Agile project. How do you go about getting them to agree to the budget and to adopt the Agile project management style? PMI certification. It can be the difference between getting the job or not. It can raise your visibility and highlight your competency. It can be the start of a whole new chapter in your professional story. At this time, 2 specific PMI certifications will be discussed. There is PMP certification, which recognizes competence of an individual to perform in the role of a project manager, specifically experienced in leading and directing projects. The qualifications include professional education of 35 hours in project management. Also, you may have professional work experience of bachelor's degree or global equivalent, a minimum of 3 years or 4,500 hours spent leading and directing projects within the last 8 years, or with a high school diploma or global equivalent, minimum 5 years or 7,500 hours spent leading and directing projects within the last 8 years. The exam for this certification includes a 4-hour, 200-question multiple choice exam. The exam fee for PMI members is $405 US, and for non-members it is $555 US. The CAPM certification recognizes a demonstrated understanding of the fundamental knowledge, processes, and terminology as defined by the PMBOK guide that are needed for effective project management performance. The professional education requirement is a minimum of a high school diploma, associate degree, or global equivalent, at least 23 hours of project management education without professional work experience, or at least 1,500 hours of professional experience on a project team without project management education. The exam is a 3-hour, 150-question multiple choice exam. The cost for PMI members is $225 US, and for non-members it is $300 US.